Okay, so I'm here down at Scissortail Park right now. As you can see, there's nobody here. I'm just chilling up under a tree. You know what I mean? And I was supposed to go to a program. It's called the Work Ready program. And I jumped on the bus, but I ended up getting lost on the bus. So I didn't make my appointment. Uh, and I have been trying to look into um, finishing my CDL, and possibly getting on the road and getting out of Oklahoma, and so Oklahoma hasn't really worked out for me in a lot of different ways, thus far. Now, tomorrow's always another day, and something magical could happen tomorrow. You know what I mean? And something that was is unexpected. You know what I mean? So, however, um, yeah. So I was not able to go to the program that I initially had wanted to, and the wind's blowing. So you might get that windy noise. So what am I going to do with myself? Like I was saying, I have had the opportunity to be productive. You know, writing, producing, making things. But I feel like I want to not be in Oklahoma and maybe go see some more of the world. Like I really have a desire to go see more of the world. You know what I mean? And have new experiences. Sometimes when you're in life and you have a stale life experience, sometimes you just gotta move. You know what I mean? And I think what is that? One of Newton's laws: a body at rest tends to stay at rest, but a body in motion tends to stay in motion. I can't remember what law that is, scientific law or whatever, but the law of inertia. You know what I mean? A body at rest tends to stay in rest. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. You know what I mean? So you think about human life, right? And sometimes we as human beings are idle. We're stuck. We're not. Our lives are not moving forward. We're not producing, making, creating anything that is significant for us. You're tapping into our own ability to create, and so like there are many people that are stuck and idle. If you have a car on and it's not moving forward, it's not getting you to work or kids to school or to the grocery store, things like that. It's just on. You turn the keys, the ignition started, it's burning up gas, but it's not doing anything, just burning up gas. That is many people in America, and not just America, but the world. It's many of us are idle with our days. You know what I mean? We wake up, we eat, you know, maybe play video games. We might rack up a high score in video games, you know what I mean? And that is some type of achievement, you know what I mean? But it does lack some of the creative, you know, expression of our heart and our soul. It's more entertainment. It's not creation. You know what I mean? Creating, producing, making, designing, experimenting, learning, growing, things of these nature that produces growth inside of us, individual. And so, you know, you can be productive with your time, you can be destructive with your time, you can destroy things, you can destroy your life, you know what I mean? Or you can be an idle, you're on just burning up gas and you're not really doing anything to move your life forward. And so I'm just at a period of time where, you know, you have to think, where's my life headed here? I'm already here in Oklahoma, and unless some things change for me, it might be time to press on to the greener pastures and see what else is out there. But you know, I've been harassed a lot here in Oklahoma. Haven't really, you know, all things happen for a reason. You know what I mean? God has ordered and determined my steps to be here for some reason for this period of time. You know what I mean? For His purposes, and so I accept that. However, if I'm looking at and evaluating my life, would I say that you know I have arrived at wherever I was trying to get to, and probably not. However, today's another day. You know, tomorrow's another day, and as long as there's breath in my lungs and passion and desire for some things, and so um, that passion that you have, and we all have passions. As a man, I have a passion for the women. I blame that completely on God's design. You know what I mean? uh, God made me a man. You know what I mean? And that's just the design of man, to need the woman, and the woman to need the man. That's God's design. Sadly, there are a lot of men and women who don't think that they need each other, and that's a recipe for a very lonely life existence. I see many women who don't have a man's love, affection, nurturing, and what that does to her spirit. A woman's spirit can grow and blossom in beauty, or it could be left to rot, or someone can come step on it, beat it down, you know what I mean, poison it, you know, throw, you know, predatory invasive species in with it that hurt it and harm it and choke the life out of it. And so that's how I see women in general as God's flower that He created for man. But He entrusted her to the man, and the calling of the man is to cultivate, just like as Adam was commanded to uh, work the Garden of Eden, work it. Some of these women take a lot of work. Some of these women got a lot of weeds that society and culture has poisoned their minds to think and believe like. You know what I mean? And all these weeds are growing up. Limiting beliefs that steer the woman's life in her mind in a certain pattern of behaviors that lead her to being hurting and lonely and broken. And a woman needs to be watered like a flower needs to be watered. A woman needs to be nurtured, and the pests that buzz around her have to be removed. You know, you got to do. You got you not. I'm not. Don't be spraying anything on the women. You know what I mean? But you know, they need to be nourished like a flower, right? You got potting soil. You got nutrient dense dirt in order to the earth in order to pot herself in. Um, a woman is a flower, and there are some flowers that have been neglected, didn't have a man to pour out the love and the affection, the nurturing to protect it from pests and the invasive species that evil people have trying to sow into these women's minds. And you know, it's sad to see, but we have generations of women's minds that are being captured, you know, by culture that's toxic and sick, and it's making men sick mentally. You know, and that's what we have to really look at. Both men and women are sick because we've been raised in a sick and nasty and disgusting toilet bowl culture. You know, that's just the truth. You know, if you've been swimming, your mind has been swimming in the toilet bowl culture, you're gonna get some filth upon your soul, a filth upon your mind, you know? And so, and filth makes you sick mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And so we have a sick culture where the men don't even want to talk to the women, you know? And the women are like, where all the men go? Well, it could be years of cultural abuse. You know what I mean? It could be how we have a system that is predatory in nature and thinks that they want to destroy the man. You know what I mean? Just completely destroy a man. Making sure the man is sleeping in his car, you know, homeless, you know what I mean, and all alone to break a man's spirit. And there's a lot of men said, I don't want nothing to do with that. Keep these ladies away from me. There's a lot of men that have gone to jail because a woman lied upon them. Supposedly ex-girlfriend, lover, whoever, mother, you know what I mean? And you got women who are lying upon the people who are the fathers of their children. Thou shalt not bear a false witness against thy neighbor. You want to lie on the man who's the father of your children. You want to lie on him, get him thrown in jail. That's completely disgusting as a woman to lie upon your baby's dad, get him thrown in jail. That's evil. That's a liar. That is a punishment that earns you everlasting fire of judgment in God's eyes because you're speaking the devil's language. Where does the devil go? You know what I mean? Like when you're out there lying upon people, bearing a false witness, somebody you accusing somebody of doing something they ain't did. Oh, he hit me, he abused me, he did this, he did that, you know, and destroying people's lives over your words. Your words are destroying people. Cops too. Sometimes cops out here lying upon people, just trying to destroy people's lives. You shouldn't even have a job. You're a menace. You are a menace to society. You're a liar, destroying people's lives, and they make you attest to under perjury that your words are true, and you over here writing false reports. You know what I mean? It's disgusting. What was I talking about? You know, women living in fantasies because Hollywood taught you a fantasy. Social media taught you a fantasy. Your education system indoctrinating you into a fantasies, and it's robbing you of your peace and your joy and your happiness and your companionship and long-term fulfillment in a family. There was a video of a girl that I was watching. I can't really remember her name. She's a pretty girl. You know what I mean? And typically, when these girls pop up and they're pretty, they get my ear for a little bit. You know what I mean? I start listening to them, especially. I'm just gonna be honest. You know, well, I'm way too honest. I probably shouldn't say too much more about that, but you know, there was one woman, who I was watching her video, and she was talking about she's wandering around. You know what I mean? She's in Portugal. You know, I think she was in the UK. You know what I mean? She sounds to be American. You know what I mean? But a lot of American people are leaving America and going across, you know, the world and wanting to see some things. You know what I mean? And experience new things. And she had said something that's like, I'm still trying to find my home. You know what I mean? And I was like, there's a reason that you haven't found your home because you haven't made your home with a man. You can have an apartment and not be a home. You can have a house but it not be a home. You know what I mean? You can have a tent and it not be a home. But the moment a man is with you, whom you love and who loves you, and then your house becomes a home. You got all these women chasing after money, you know, like anybody who's been married and had, got a divorce. You had a home. You wanted somebody else's life. You wanted somebody else's, you know, husband. You wanted somebody else's wife. This is what our society and culture brings. It breeds a a state of mental uh, never enough. Women wake up never enough because they want that man. It don't matter if he's married. They want his house, his cars, his clothes, his money, material possessions, superficiality in living and things like that. You know what I mean? And so both men and women in our culture are sick. You know what I mean? They're alone. They go to their jobs. They come home to their dogs and hug and kiss on dogs. You could tell that's a mental sickness, bro. Just off of that, if you're running into the arms of your puppy or your dog or your boy or your girl, whatever you call this thing, you know what I mean? I think that's a mental sickness. Giving your love and your affection and your kisses to dogs and cats who stink and sleeping with them and letting them crawl in your bed and rub their butts on you. That is an emotional crutch that you're picking up because your true need, your true desires is to have a man in your life. You know what I mean? These women are coming home to these cats talking about I'm lonely. Yes, you're gonna be lonely. You know what I mean? But you live in a culture that has attacked men. And so when you have a culture that treats men with disrespect, like we are some type of, you know, predatory animal, it's you have lists up there of people's faces destroying their image, their reputation, and their name. You know what I mean? Because some woman accused him of doing something. Now, if he did do something, then there should be consequences. You don't be out here hurting the women. You know what I mean? However, you see the destruction of a man. You don't see his redemption from failures and mistakes and regrets and things like that. You see his shame always in front of his face. You know what I mean? Predatory lists. You know what I mean? So that's attack that men go through mentally. The attack through the child support system destroys him financially. The prison system tries to mentally break him and emasculate him of his manhood, strip him naked, make him put on the slave clothes. This culture is destroying us men. This system, it's a system of destruction of the man and the woman. You know what I mean? It's not helping the man and the woman to be better, to build them up. You know what I mean? So they can be better men or better women. You know what I mean? It's designed from the very institutions of power to indoctrinate men on what to think about themselves, to try to teach women and indoctrinate them into what they believe about themselves and about men and others. It's all an attempt to capture your mind and to program you on what to think and believe and what to value in life. You have been indoctrinated with your beliefs. Now, some of these beliefs are good, some of these beliefs are true, some of these beliefs that you may hold are could be falsehoods. It could be outright lies that you're believing. You know, I see a lot of these girls with these tarot cards, and they're searching to communicate with the spirit. You know, and that's the type of terminology they use is the spirit. You know what I mean? And and so, uh, you know, but one of my things that the concerns that I have about these tarot cards is, are these tarot cards limiting beliefs? You know, because you have a deck that somebody created, you know what I mean, with images on it. And you say the spirit is telling me the two lovers, you know what I mean? So there's a love coming into my life. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Did that lover ever come? Did that lover ever manifest after you listen to that spirit? And so I'm taking the more rational approach, right? If if the spirit that you're talking to is telling you that you're about to meet a man, you know, a man is coming to you. And this is a lot of what I hear, a relationship is coming to you, something's coming to you. Okay. Do you, you know, evaluate that? Do you write that down? Because, like, you know, back in the day, you know, the prophets of old would record their words, would write down what they believed God told them, and they wrote it down. And for a lot of you who are using the tarot cards, are you writing down these messages that you feel the spirit is telling you, you know, and are they coming true? Or is it a lying and deceiving spirit? Because there are, God's spirit is the spirit of truth. There are other spirits out there that are deceiving spirits. You know what I mean? And so, I would be curious to find out your numbers. Like, okay, you want to do a tarot reading? I want you to write down what you feel the spirit is leading you to say about these cards. You know what I mean? But I can guarantee you how many women out there are lonely right now and wanting love. That's going to be a message that I think almost every woman wants to have is love is coming into your life. A man is coming into your life. And so if a woman who's already married hears that message, oh, there's another man coming into my life. But I'm married. Oh, well, there was another man coming into my life. The spirit said so. So I met this dude at the bar, and now you're getting divorced. You know what I mean? And so, I have some questions. about, and what's scary is, you know, one of these women, and there's a few of them that I hear speaking, and I'm just like, man, like either you're watching me, either you're listening to me, or something's going on, because like there's a lot of things that you just said there that that's me, you know what I mean? Or it could be, you know, something so generalized that applies to almost everyone, you know. Oh, your breaths are very, very heavy today. Wow, okay, yeah, my breaths are heavy. You know what I mean? Or oh, so like you can say very, very generalized things that apply to almost everyone, you know, and you'd be spot on for almost everyone, but I'm just curious to find out, like, you know, where's the testimony? Where's the witness that says, you know what? You gave me this reading with these cards and it came true. There should be some, because everybody, if this is a very generalized reading, you know what I mean, and not directed, because sometimes what if you're the one doing the reading and that message is for you from the spirit, and you're saying it's for other people, but you're the one who's pulling the cards, you're the ones feeling the impressions in your spirit, you know what I mean? What if that message is to you? You know what I mean? And so I think, you know, I have a lot of questions about the tarot. Um, First of all, is it truthful? Do these things actually come true? You know what I mean? For people, these readings, these messages. So I'm curious to see if this spirit that you're talking to is telling you truthful things, or is it a deceiving spirit that's leading you into a life of passivity? When someone says something's coming to you, that leads you to passivity. You just sit there and wait. Oh, a man's coming for me, so I'm just gonna sit here in the park and wait. Just sit here and wait. A man's coming. A man's coming. A man's coming, and they never come because you thought he was coming, and you decided to take no action to actually seek out someone, get connected, or a man's coming, and you just sit in the house and wait year after year, and you're like, man, he never came. I was waiting on my front porch for 30 years for the man to knock on my door and come get me out of my loneliness, and he never came. You know what I mean? This is why I tell women, if you're lonely, do something about it. If you're longing to be married, find you a man who is interested in long-term meaningful relationships. But you have to be a fisher of men. If you want to eat, you better learn how to catch you a fish, ladies. You know what I mean? And you know, you got to determine what type of man that you're interested in catching. Maybe some certain non-negotiable qualities that of character that you're interested in finding. And a lot of you women will have a checklist of, must make six figures, must be, multi-millionaire, must have estates in, what I mean, like that you're interested in the wrong thing. Superficiality that's here today and gone tomorrow. And that's a limiting belief that's keeping you alone. Really is. And it's disgusting that we live in a culture that values a man based solely on how much money is in his bank account. And you deem those individuals who don't have that as being worthless. That's a disgusting culture. You have no value unless you have money in your bank account. Same things go for girls too, though. I mean, if we're gonna flip, you know, the pressure And the feelings of worthlessness that women experience if they don't meet some standard of beauty. You know what I mean? You know, and if a woman doesn't meet that standard of beauty, physical beauty, her value is deemed to be worthless. And you have a lot of these women walking around with spirits. They feel their own spirit of worthlessness because the feedback that they get from society is you have no value because you don't look this way. Same goes for women. We value women based on their physical appearance. And beauty is fleeting. You know, you might be beautiful age 20. What happens when you're 30? What happens when you're 40? What happens when you're 50, 60? What happens when you're 100? Where did all that beauty go? You had it for a few years and you lived a life still trying to catch it. I mean, that's the irony of the women's beauty culture is women chase after beauty because they know us men desire beautiful women. And so these women are out here chasing after beauty so that we can chase them. Because that's what us men are doing. We're chasing these women. That's what God made. God made a woman, and us men, we be chasing them. What is it about a woman that makes a man want her? I think it's just God's design. God programmed us as men to chase after these girls, to need them, to want them, to desire them. You know what I mean? Um, and women want to be desired by us men too. This is why they going broke, charging up, maxing out credit cards, buying these pair of pants, getting these, you know, breast augmented and liposuction and you know how much money do women spend every year or every month to attract a man? Just think, just all you ladies out there, and I'm sure there's probably not a lot of women who watch this show or my words or whatever, but how much money do you spend to attract a man to you? You exhaust yourself, you exhaust your money and your resources chasing after beauty that's here today and gone tomorrow. You spend your whole life chasing makeup, cars, clothes, you know, material possessions, chasing after beauty, and you wake up one day and beauty's gone. You chased it your whole life, exhausted yourself, your physical resources, you know what I mean? Chasing after something that you could never hold on to, you know? And vanity is a very real thing. There's a lot of women who put on a pair of pants and all of a sudden they think they're sexy, they're hot, they're cute. And that pride puffs them up and it makes them overvalue themselves. All these men telling me I'm how hot I am. And they get all prideful, conceited. All these men want me. then the days go past and your body starts changing. And the men that used to say you were so amazingly beautiful, you're fortunate to have one man by your side calling you so beautiful. These women out here want to be desired by millions of men instead of having one man who wants them and loves them and cherishes them. They want to have millions of men loving after them, lusting after them, desiring them. You know what I mean? That is a cultural infection, a rottenness that has taken over people's minds. You know, I'm more into the simplicity of it. You know what I mean? Um, I'm more into, in a very anthropological way, just stepping back and evaluating the crisis that is going on with the men and the women here in the West. You know, you got both men and women thinking they don't need each other. One playing video games. You know what I mean? Uh, I don't know what the other girls are doing. What are the girls doing nowadays? Booty call hookups. You know, fishing with your vagina. You know what I mean? That could be, you know, because that's what typical dating is in modern day dating. You fishing for a man, trying to capture a man with your vagina. You're like, here it is. You know, trying to hook him in, and sometimes you could hook a man like that. You know, with between those legs. I mean, that's real talk. You know, but is he gonna break free? You got a few minutes to hook a man. You know what I mean? And what do you got between your legs that another woman don't got? Every woman has a vagina. That's her sex organ. You know what I mean? That's what differentiates you from the male, is your different sexual organ that you have. And every woman has that same organ. If every woman's beauty fluctuates, you know, some days more beautiful, other days less beautiful, but women chase after beauty, physical looks, almost the whole entire continuum of their existence. From the day they're born, you know, or start becoming aware of what beauty is, you know what I mean, to the day they die, it's usually a chasing after life, health, and beauty for women, family, things of that nature. And how exhausting is it to live your life chasing after something that you can't ever catch? You can't ever catch beauty. And not everybody's going to think you're beautiful. There are some people who think you're beautiful, and other people are like, yeah, she's okay. Or, yeah, not at all. You know what I mean? It's vanity. $1 million in your bank account, I'm rich. Vanity. Prideful, arrogant vanity. Rottenness of the spirit then takes over. That rotten, oh, I'm so cute. Look at me. That rottenness takes over and corrupts the mind and becomes spiritually, you become rotten. Can't ever chase after it. You could chase beauty, but you ain't never gonna catch it. And the money that you chase after, you run yourself ragged chasing after money. Bigger house, bigger cars, bigger clothes, bigger jewels, material stuff to attract a woman, because you know a woman wants that stuff. And sometimes she wants it so much she'll stab you in the back and take it from you, lie upon you to the police, get you thrown in jail, take your house, destroy your family, rip it apart, get the house as a divorce settlement. You know what I mean? That's what this culture is for us men. A culture of victimization, and I understand why a lot of guys are like, yeah, I'm good on that. I'm gonna live my life. Yes, it's painful, but instead of losing everything you have when a relationship goes wrong, you lose your house, your car, your children, your best friend, the woman that you loved. You know what I mean? And you just train wreck it all because you wanted someone's house. This is why love slavery is the only option. All you getting is you getting me. That's the contract. You getting me, and that's all you getting, and that's all you are gonna ever need. Yeah, the sexes need to be spiritually delivered from a toxic culture, and a lot of people are hurting. A lot of people are broken. You know, a lot of people are just wounded in life. People are wounded by ex-husbands, ex-wives, wounded by children, abandoned, left alone. And without someone to water them, nurture them, to nourish their soul, to build them up. A lot of women don't have a man to water her soul. And these women are trying to do the best they can to hold on because inside they're dying because they're not being looked after. And that's really, you know, when you talk about a vineyard, when you're talking about uh, a harvest of crop, a farm, there's a lot of work that it takes to care for your crops. You gotta water it. You gotta fertilize it. You know, you gotta protect it from the pests and the beasts that come flying down trying to, you put up a scarecrow, something to scare it away. You know what I mean? The same thing for that woman and that man, and we neglect men. We wanna throw men away and act like you know they are worthless too if they don't have certain things that we value in them. You know, a man needs to be encouraged, built up, helped, and the same thing with a woman. You know, a woman needs to be helped. She needs to be watered. Her soul needs to be nourished. She needs to be bathed and washed clean from the filth of this world. You know what I mean? A woman needs to be cared for. A man needs to be cared for. And when that doesn't happen, like all things, people health can deteriorate. If you're not focusing on your health, it will depreciate. And so um I'm was on here talking a lot longer than I had initially planned on coming here for. But I'm at the park. Cops beat me down over there. Doing a playoff game. Uh, Carted me off, threw me in jail. Falsely accused me of trespassing on private property for being in a park. I mean, city park. All these traumas that have been inflicted upon me in Oklahoma City makes me think that it's time for me to move on out of here, hit the road. I mean, I see a lot of people, on YouTube doing their conversations from their cars. You know, and I'm starting to think like, hey, that's a good thing because at least if you're in the car, you're in the process of going somewhere. You know what I mean? Do you know where you're going? What direction you're headed to in life? You know what I mean? I think this is a big problem why many people are lost is there's no clear direction for their goals of their life. You know, it's they have goals of get this job, finish this college. You know what I mean? That's the focus on many people's minds is a job and career and money, and so they chase after what their eyes are focused on. Your focus determines what you pursue. You know what I mean? Wherever you look, that's where you're going. That's where you're heading. And so many people don't have goals in their lives on what they're moving for. And that's okay if you don't have any goals right now. But get some. Get a direction for your life. You know what I mean? And move your life from being idle. Some people like, who are recording their YouTube talks in their cars have the car on, so the air conditioning's on and it's blowing and they're comfortable, things like that. You cut down on the outside noises, you know what I mean, with the windows up, but it's burning gas, and you're not going anywhere at that point. You're comfortable, you know what I mean, and how many people are comfortable in their life, not a single worry about food, clothing, shelter, what you're going to eat or drink, you know what I mean? Completely not even thinking about those things. And just sitting in the car and idle, not doing anything productively to produce, to make, to create, to move their life forward. Then you have people who are destructive with their time and using their time to destroy their lives. Drug addiction is a big thing that causes a lot of people to destroy their lives. You chasing after money so you can get the drugs, so you can feel good. You know what I mean? Chasing after pleasure because you want to feel good. You know what I mean? Sometimes that pursuit leads you to a dead end in life. You know what I mean? And so, it's good. It's often good to take time to think about your life, where it's headed, where you want it to go. I mean, because you can manifest through your goals, through goal setting. You can very much do that, and it's a lot easier to set a goal, to do something, to become something, and manifest that change in your life. You can do that relatively easily, and so the more spiritual, esoteric forms of manifesting things, sometimes don't work out. You know what I mean? You're mentally and spiritually trying to manifest things, but you're not taking the action to manifest it in your real life. You know what I mean? If you want a man, you got to get close to men. You got to talk to men. You got to be friends with men. You got to have some kind of communication. You know what I mean? And so, if you want a woman in your life, You got to be social. One of the best things uh, that I started doing recently was attending a yoga class in the park. You know what I mean? And got to know some people. You know, um, and it's you know it's not really, up until this point, hasn't been. It's just more of a familiarity, acquaintance. But you don't know Sparks. I could meet a girl there and pay attention to her and be like, oh, the sun could be just hitting her just right, and I'd be like, oh, I'm starting to feel all woozy. You know what I mean? You don't know how things will be happening, but you gotta get outside. You have to leave your apartment, the darkness of your basement. You have to leave your car. You have to actually speak and get to know people and socialize, and you don't know who you're gonna meet in the real world. And but you have to take action to manifest your dreams. You have to take, and some of us are bound in service to God. You know what I mean? And so my service, I have to live my life in a way that pleases God and do the things He wants me to do. And so for me, it's not necessarily even about doing the things that I want. You know what I mean? I have to also be cognizant of the things that God wants and do what God wants, not what I want. And so, um, but action is what manifests your dreams. Can you articulate your dream? You know, a lot of people can't even say and articulate what they want in life because they just don't know. You know, and that's the first place. What is your goal? What are you trying to do? What do you want to accomplish? I want to get out of Oklahoma. I'm not really looking forward to going back to college. Yeah, I have a 4-year degree already. You know what I mean? I'm not really looking to get driven deeper into debt, that I have to pay off. Um, I want to leave Oklahoma, start a new adventure somewhere else, and see what happens. But wanting to go to the beach, and one of the biggest reasons why I've been wanting to get a job again is so I can have somebody to go to the beach and actually have a beach experience. Camp out on the beach. That's probably what I need to do. Just take, you know, do a trip down to the beach. I can rent a little U-Haul and pack it with some of the things that I need, some supplies. I can sleep right in the truck bed cap. You know what I mean? Because I usually have an open truck bed. Sleep right under the stars. Put some sleeping bags in there, or sleep right on the beach. You know, get the sun. And that's what I need. I need at least a week at the beach just to relax and enjoy. And but it takes money to do that, and I need a job, and so uh, yeah. But it's good to be out of jail. It's good to be relatively free. You know what I mean? And to think about your life, where it's headed, where you want it to go, your desires. What are your goals? What are your desires? What are you willing to do to work to manifest your goals? Because I hear a lot of people talking about manifesting things just in a more spiritual way, and I think that's a part of manifesting. In the first part of that is to have a vision in your mind for where you're headed, where you're going, a goal. You know what I mean? In your mental and spiritual capacities can help you to dream that. So yes, manifesting is birthed in a very you look at somebody designing a car. The engineer sits down and visualizes the type and designs the car that he wants. So manifesting is a spiritual and a mental activation. But once you have manifested the image of that thing that you want, the car, the shirt, the blouse, then you have to develop a pathway to action steps and on how to have it materialized. You know what I mean? I told a woman, I was like, I'm trying to manifest you in my arms forever. She was beautiful. I don't make any uh, excuses for what I said because it was absolutely true. She was gorgeous, and why wouldn't I want to manifest her in my arms forever? You know what I mean? But just so you can visualize that person, just so you know have a concept of who she is and the things that you desire. You desire her, and but that's not it. There's actually, in order to manifest that person into your arms forever, there has to be some type of action that has to be taking place. If she's in another city, then the action most obviously is I got to get to her or she has to get to me. You know what I mean? There has to be some action that has to be completed in order to make that manifest that desire into reality. So I think a lot of people who talk about manifesting in a purely spiritual and mental capacity are missing out on, you know, that's the initial phase of manifesting. Visualizing, setting the goal of the desire, but then you have to take action to do that. You know what I mean? And so once you the action is what produces the change. You know what I mean? And it moves you closer and closer to realization of that manifested reality. Because you have a manifested desire, but then you also have a manifested reality, and that's what you want. You don't want to just manifest desires, because if I'm manifesting the desire for a beautiful woman and I don't have her in my arms, then that's I'm worse off at the end, because now I'm hurting, I'm longing, uh, and I'm full of desire for something that I can't have. There's a bird just flying around here. I'm not sure what he's doing, but you see the birdie taking off. But you know what I mean? So that's what I think. A lot of people want to talk about manifesting things in their life. Well, one of the quickest ways of manifesting things in your life is to establish a goal. Write it down, clearly articulated. We live in a real world that of cause and effect. When I pick up this slipper and I put it on my feet, I got a slipper on my foot. But it took this action to produce a change in my foot. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people are making a mistake of wanting to manifest desires, and they can see it and they can visualize it, but never taking action in the work that it takes to build that reality for yourself. You have to build that reality for yourself. How do you want to manifest having a family if you're not willing to work to build that reality? You know what I mean? So you've taken the first step when you start sitting down and you're daydreaming about a man, about daydreaming about a woman, daydreaming about whatever. you're manifesting and visualizing that desire in your mind, but it's not a reality. It's just a manifested desire. It's in your thoughts, in your mind. You have to actually do something to bring that manifested desire into a manifested reality. Because if not, it's just going to be desire that never manifests. And I think this is one of the biggest problems that I see with a lot of the tarot card readings is it creates a spirit of passivity where you're expecting things to happen to you instead of you being the one that's moving the obstacles that are in your way. You are not just an idle recipient of spiritual energy. You have spiritual energy inside of you which to move mountains. You know what I mean? To move obstacles. You have the potential to be the change that you want to see in the world. You know what I mean? And so you have to do something. It takes a vision from God, and sometimes God uses the visions that you have in your heart to start moving you in certain directions. And I have some ideas. Of course, I've been wanting to really, one of my biggest goals, and let me lay down for a little bit. So one of my, I have several ministries that have been pressing upon my heart. A singles ministry, um, to help minister to the single men and women out there who are hurting, being alone, and just need friends, need people along their side, people to talk to, people to share moments and life's adventures with. So um, that is a ministry that has been on my heart. Then I have the my shows, what I mean, that I'm doing on YouTube. Uh, I am your love slave. Personal desire inside of me to find a suitable helper for my needs. You know, that has never gone away, and I don't anticipate that it ever being gone, because a man's always going to need a woman in his life, and a woman's always going to need a man in her life. And when we don't have that, we lack the nourishment that the other one brings into our lives. The male and the female are complementary. They're not adversarial. They're not supposed to be adversarial. They're not supposed to be fighting against each other. They're supposed to be helping each other in this life. We should be complementing each other, encouraging, building each other up, ministering to each other. That's what I need. A brother needs his wife's ministry in his life to minister to his needs. And there ain't nothing wrong with accepting that. But the more and more I starve for those needs, the desire to eat out the trash can starts to, like a hungry man, if he's starving for food, will start going through the trash cans and looking for food. And that's sad. The same thing we do for, starving man who needs a woman. We'll dig out the trash can for the woman. You know what I mean? Who we don't need to be with, but we're starving. You know what I mean? These are needs. And same thing with women, right? Women, there are many of them out there who are starving for a man's love. She getting herself dogs and cats to hold on, to kiss, because she's lonely. And so, like, How does a man even find a woman whose mind is not so twisted and gone and corrupted by this world that he actually can have actually a future with that woman? You know, if I get in the car with my wife and say, "Hey, we're going to take a trip," and somewhere, say we're in Oklahoma City, so say I've been wanting to go to California, so you know, I want to take a trip to California, hit the beaches up, see some of the national forests, smoke some recreational weed, enjoy my life, a week or so, however much that is, and I go and I set off from Oklahoma City in a car, and I'm driving to California, and halfway along the road, my wife says, "You know what? I'm tired of driving in this car with you. I don't want to go there. I'm leaving." I'm like, "What? We was planning on all this, having this moment and sharing this, and then you get train wrecked." You know what I mean? That's what happens to how many people in our culture and society. They life train wrecks them from the things that they initially planned. And any man who gets into a relationship with a woman in this day and age is going to be faced with that pull. Sometimes the direction of your life and the one who's bound themselves to you, she doesn't want to go in the same direction. She wants to go somewhere else. And she says, "You know what? You go that way, I'm going this way." And you separate, And so the chances of that in our corrupted culture is very likely, leading to heartache and pain and brokenness and broken families and all the things that come along with that. What is a man to do? I think a man has to be delivered of the fear of women. You know what I mean? And it's not a fear of talking to women. You know what I mean? The fear of the retribution of a society that destroys women, just waiting for you to get into a relationship and get divorced. And they're like, here come the predators. They're about to come and attack like a shark. You know what I mean? Destroy and rape this man for all he has. Why? Because him and his relationship with this woman didn't work out. You know what I mean? And we have a system that's going to destroy him. You know, this system is very predatory against the men. And for you ladies who have sons, your sons are going to have to go through this predatory system. Many of them already are. And so I I think this system is corrupt. I think it needs to be destroyed completely, and we need to build a new system completely. You know, but we have to be delivered in our mind from these predatory instincts that women have upon men, because there are many women out there who prey upon men. They prey upon your loneliness, your pain, your isolation, and they victimize you. There's women who take advantage of lonely men. There are men who take advantage of vulnerable women, and all that has to stop. Everybody wants to prey upon each other, predatory instincts instead of helping each other, building each other up, being a blessing to other people. You know, it's like women see you as like, oh, I want to see how much money is in your bank account because I'm about to jump on you, prey upon you, and take every last cent you got. That's the sickness, the spiritual darkness that is inside women who do that. You are a spiritually darkened person to want to prey upon a man and destroy him. Same thing with men, right? If you're preying upon women, your spirit is already dark. And God makes you answer for those things. The hell that you experience, is because you're delivering hell to other people. You're sowing hell and destruction into other people's lives. Stop preying upon your fellow man. I don't care if it's the homeless man, you know what I mean? I don't care if it's, whoever. But I'm on here rambling. I've been on here for a minute here. Let's see how I don't even know how long this is. Well, I'm gonna stop here. Try to find my bearings and figure out what I'm gonna do for the rest of the day. My day didn't go anywhere near the way I had wanted it to go. Um, Downtown Oklahoma for the day. I'm gonna hang out here for a few more minutes and then probably make my way back up north. So, shalom, blessings upon you, and it's time to manifest realities, not dreams. We manifest a dream first, and then we take the action to manifest that reality. Let's do that.